Hi, everyone. Welcome to Energy, Connection, and Courage at Work. We are here today continuing our conversation about energy, and we're going to be specifically talking today about physical energy. My name is Natalie Johnson.
And I'm Rebecca Johnson.
And as you've probably heard us say many times, we are not related. We just share the same last name. I feel the need to say that almost every time, but maybe we'll be done saying that now. Our focus today is going to be on energy, specifically physical energy. Our physical energy is really the quantity of energy that we bring to any given time. And oftentimes I'm tempted to not say too much about physical energy because it's, all the things that impact our physical energy are all the things that we know. It's things like, are we exercising? How are we eating? Are we getting enough sleep? Are we moving enough during the day? And so it seems like common sense, and it seems like all the things that we already know we should be doing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we are doing them. We all know that we could be, or maybe would be healthier if we engaged in some physical strategies better or more, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we do them. And so today we want to continue the conversation with Rebecca. She shared in a previous podcast an experience that she had where she found herself in a place where she just felt burnt out and not able to keep up with the demands in her life. And we started that conversation in episode 1, and we're going to continue that conversation today. And so, Beck, I was curious if you would be willing to share how physical energy and strategies around physical energy are part of your journey and what you shared with us previously.
Yeah. So in episode 1, talked a little bit about kind of my crash into burnout that got acutely bad in March of 2021. And talking about, what I've been doing differently over the last 2.5 years feels hard to do in a short period of time because it's been multifaceted and it's really been my life's work. But I'm going to do my best to just kind of call out a few points that I feel like are most important. So when I look back on that time in my life, I see now that there were a couple of factors that collided that really sort of pushed me over the edge, after kind of a slow decline into burnout over a decade that really brought it acutely to that anxiety attack that I described in episode 1. And both of those things actually had to do with my physical energy. And it's interesting to say that because I hadn't previously thought until recently that it was about physical energy because it felt like I was in sort of an emotional crisis. But I realized that in terms of energy, I'm actually quite good at making sure that I'm bringing a good quality of energy to my moments. I mean, my purpose, we talked about purpose in episode 2, is to be as present and connected in as many of my moments as I can. And I'm also really good about making sure that I'm directing the focus of my energy is where I want it to be. But my challenge is really physical energy. Like I often go around feeling like I'm starving for energy, like I just don't have enough to meet the demands of my life. And so the two things that maybe were most acutely a problem in my life at that point that led to that crash that have to do with physical energy were sleep and alone time. Now, there were many other issues and lots of other things I can talk about. And so I'm going to just talk about sleep and alone time today as maybe two of my most important sort of recovery strategies. And what I just sort of a long story short, I want to say that a lot of this for me has to do with the fact that I lived as a single mom for quite a long period of time. And although that was stressful, what it meant was that I could keep my life kind of orderly and organized in a way that allowed me to go to bed at a certain time and get enough sleep. And, every other weekend when my kids were at their dad's house, I had this, 48-hour period of alone time. And I realized in retrospect that that was how I recharged my physical energy. For 12 days, I gave to kids and to work and to family and community. And then I would have these 2 days where I would be mostly alone. I'm pretty introverted, so that's how I recharge my batteries. And that when I joined my life with Dave in 2019 and we began living together as a blended family, that because life got so much more complex, I no longer had the reliable ability to go to bed at a certain time and sleep for 8 hours, and I had exactly zero alone time. So by the time March of 2021 came, I had several years under my belt of like not nearly enough alone time, lots of people in the house. We'd been through COVID, bedtime was harder because my kids were getting older, and now there were 6 of us in the house. And so what had been kind of stripped from me is the opportunities that I'd previously had to recharge my physical energy. And so while there were many things that I've been working on since March of 2021, those are the 2 most important pieces. And without getting into the specifics of how all that's happened for me, probably the main point I want to make is that although it might seem easy, like, well, just go to bed on time and get your 8 hours of sleep and carve out some time for alone time, it wasn't that simple for me, because in order to carve out time and protect it for enough sleep and enough alone time, lots of things had to change. I had to start practicing some things. I had to start honoring some boundaries. I had to start having hard conversations with people in my family designed to help me carve out and protect this alone time and sleep time. And the reason that that was hard for me is because I'm doing like lots of retrospective insight on this, but I realized that I've sort of associated being a good person with being available for everybody all the time when anyone's around, right? Like I want to be present and connected. And so to say at 9:30, I'm going upstairs. I don't know what the rest of you are doing, but I'm going to bed. Good night. I don't care if your teeth are brushed. You go make your own lunch. I don't care if you need something, to say, everybody find a place to be on Saturday morning because I need alone time. In order to say those things and carve out that time, I had to have conversations that I realized made me feel like I was being unkind or unloving, and that people might perceive that me protecting that time for myself was sort of the opposite of an act of love. So, lots of practices I had to enact, lots of boundaries I had to make, lots of hard conversations. But in order for me to do those things, 2 things had to happen. And one of them was I had to completely change my narrative around, what it means to be a good person. Being a good person doesn't mean being available to all of the people all the time. If you really want to be present and connected with the people and things that matter most, you don't have enough energy to do that all the time when anyone needs you. And so protecting and carving time for sleep and alone time was stepping away from all the people and things that matter enough to recharge so that when I would go back to them, I could really be present and connected. Because otherwise, I was just running on fumes and I wasn't really being present. I was just pretending to be present. Mostly, I was just resentful that there were so many things and people that I felt needed my attention. So, number one, I had to rewrite my inner narrative on, what it means to live to my potential and what type of person am I and what does that mean I do. And also, I had to kind of face some fear. We talked about this, Nat, in episode 2, about worrying about how my honoring boundaries would affect other people. And I sort of had to reframe that in my mind and for them as I'm honoring these boundaries around sleep and alone time because I want to be present and connected with you more of the time. And I can't do that unless I have enough physical energy. So for me, you'll hear me say this a lot, but it's kind of like anything that we need to do in our lives, whether it's replenish and restore physical energy or change the quality of our emotional energy or redirect our mental energy, it always requires that we do different things. But those different things that we have to do usually require that we have conversations with other people. And those conversations are often hard. If they weren't hard, we already would have had them. If it was easy for me to protect time for sleep and alone time, I would have done that. I didn't for years, and then I ended up in a crash. And so the hard part about that is not often doing the thing you need to do. It's not often exercising more. It's not often eating right. It's about all the conversations that you have to have and all the changes in your own narrative and your sort of view of who you are in the world. And that's the stuff that requires courage. So that has been my life's work for the last 2.5 years. And after many conversations and boundaries and practices, I mean, it's certainly not perfect, but I have so much more freedom and presence with the people and things that matter most because I step away periodically to recharge my physical energy.
Yeah. And thank you so much for sharing, Beckett. I think there's two main things that stand out to me when I hear your story. And the first part is that one of the initial things that you had to do was this reframing
Mm-hmm.
around what it means to create boundaries and take time for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to go from the story of, if I go to bed at 9:30 and say, see you later, I don't care if you brushed your teeth or have your lunch back, I'm going to bed, and everybody needs to go find somewhere to be on Saturday so I can be by myself. There was this reframing of that, in that it's not that you're being selfish
Right.
and taking time for yourself. It's that you're actually going to do some things intentionally so that you can show up the way you want to when you are with your family and when all the craziness is going on. And so that
Mm-hmm.
you don't have an emotional crisis.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I heard, part one was really digging into that story in your head and being able to frame it in a way that shows to you and other people that me doing this isn't selfish. This is me actually now being able to show up the way I want and support my family and my kids and even my work. And I think the second part that I heard was, it's not the doing that's hard.
Yeah.
It's not the I'm going to go to
Mm-hmm.
bed hard. It's the conversations that you need to have up front around the boundaries so that you can do that. It's the hard conversations. It's the protecting of the boundaries that is the hard part. And I completely agree.
Yeah.
One other thing that stood out to me when you were talking in the beginning is you said, originally I thought, maybe this was more of an emotional crisis, but it wasn't. It was physical energy. And so I'm curious, what relationship have you experienced around, okay, now I've been able to reframe my story, really invest in some self care around sleep. What impact have the physical energy strategies had on your either having or not having an emotional crisis?
Yeah. I mean, the emotional crisis was the result of allowing my physical energy to be spread too thin and not recovering it periodically for many, many years. And so for me, an emotional crisis is a sign that I am not enacting practices and boundaries around my energy that are allowing me to restore. And so, I'm really good at the work on navigating my own emotions and kind of, thinking about my mental focus. But because I have the story that, like, my physical energy is anybody else's who needs it at any point, always, it just means that I allow it to be spread too thin and I don't take the time to recover it. So weirdly, even though it resulted in what for me felt like a very deep emotional crisis, it was really about reclaiming my own physical energy.
Absolutely. And I think I hear loud and clear that the physical energy, that quantity of energy that we have, when we're able to protect that energy, that it actually has a relationship to our emotional well-being and our emotional well-being as well. And I always think about it as, physical energy is really foundational. When we
Mm-hmm.
can have it, when we have physical energy, it's a lot easier to show up and be open and curious and further away from the emotional crisis.
Yes.
So
Yes.
thank you. Thank you for sharing your story.
What's funny is that if you think about it, like when we're in a training with a client and we're talking about, how do we get ourselves mentally above the line, or what do we do when we are in the stress zone? And we ask people, go think about some things that you could practice, that would help you move from stress to recovery, that would help you get from below to above the line. I mean, at least 50% of the things that people come up with are things with their body. I'm going to sit and breathe deeply. I'm going to
Yep.
go for a walk. It sounds like common sense, but the connection is deep, that many times the things we do to navigate our own emotional energy and to regulate it and to recover it have to do with things we do with our body.
Yep.
There's such a deep connection there.
Yep. Absolutely.
We were thinking about one big thing to leave with our audience. And I would love our listeners to think about around your physical energy to build more or replenish or recover as you need to. What practice do you need to enact, or what boundary do you need to honor in order to do that? And more importantly, who are you going to need to have a hard conversation with? Think a little bit about, who am I going to need to talk to? What is that conversation going to be like? And why does that feel hard?
I love it. Because as you said, the doing of the physical things doesn't seem that hard. It's the establishing of the boundaries and conversations you need to have so it can happen that's hard. So I love it.
All right, that brings us to secret time.
Yes, yes. So Beck and I have committed to sharing a secret about ourselves at the end of each episode. And I think I'm going to let you go first, Beck.
Okay. What is my secret? My little interesting tidbit. Oh, whenever anyone gets my name wrong, they always call me Rachel. And recently, so I was in a training and this woman was like, gosh, you remind me so much of someone. It's my friend. Her name is Rachel. So I feel like I have a doppelganger out there in the world and her name is Rachel.
Yes, I could see that. You do kind of look like a Rachel. And then that makes me think about the other part of you, which is some of us call you Rebecca, some of us call you Becky, and I call you Beck sometimes. So there's lots of variations.
Yeah, I have a lot of name confusion.
Yeah. I think, I think where I've landed is just an interesting fact. So my whole life, I've worked in this field of exercise and nutrition and sport performance and sports psychology and all this, but I did take a little bit of a side route and I worked in film production and I was the executive assistant for the Florida Institute for Film Education for a while. And I was out at film festivals and doing stuff in film for a while. And then I decided I didn't want to be in that industry. And then I came back.
I love these secrets. I don't know if anybody else likes them, but I love them because I continue to learn the most interesting little tidbits about you.
Yeah. So thank you, everybody, for your energy today. And join us again where we'll be talking about energy, connection, and courage at work.
I'm Rosie Ward, and this is Show Up as a Leader. To learn more, head over to peopleforwardnetwork.com and, of course, hit that follow button.